Time to wake up and smell the coffee. Guess who's back? The commish. Back here with week previews. This time it's week 4, guys. Things are starting to become a little bit more clearer. Some people are still undefeated. Let's just get right into it. First game, Ryan and Deuce Bombers 2-1, taking on one of those undefeated teams, Ryan and Long Yard, the class of the South, 3-0. A team that's beaten Luke and myself, the top 2 teams in the South. So you got to think that Ryan and Long Yard looks like the best team in the South at this point. Looking at Deuce Bombers, the guy's got the Fantasy Player of the Year in Kareem Hunt. Guy's averaging 37.9 points a game. I'm still surprised that somebody gave up on him. The QB matchups are horrible for Deuce in this one, though. He's either got to dress Simeon versus Oakland or Dalton versus Cleveland. I don't like either one. He's got Jacquizz Rodgers for one more game, so he's got him for this game, and then that'll be it. I'm looking at this, though, as Long Yard's luck run out. Do you look at it? Do you need to start Goff? Is Goff your new starter? And Eddie Lacy, when will this guy be released? Maybe it'll have to be after another sandwich, but I do have Deuce winning this one, and Long Yard should get his first loss. Next up, we got Saving Ryan, 2-1 versus Milan in the 6, 3-0. First meeting between these divisional foes should be good. Both have tough quarterback matchups, so Matty Ice versus Buffalo, Cousins at Kansas City, so those don't look too good. Looking at the 4th pick of the draft, like in the entire draft for Glenn and Saving Ryan, he picked Latavius Murray. So far he's averaging 0.47 points a game, not the kind of production I'm sure he wanted out of the 4th pick overall in the draft. Our Kyle Rudolph watch for Milan in the 6, 19.9 points overall, 6.63 points a game. Not sure if that's worth the first rounder. Milan thought so. J.J. Nelson, the durability of him is going to be a cause for concern possibly for Milan in the 6. And looking at it, Milan in the 6 has the least points against in the entire league, which might talk about a little bit about his competition that he's faced so far. In this one, I actually have Glenn and Saving Matt's Ryan to knock off Milan in the 6. Next up, we got Fighting Geese, 3-0, another one of those undefeated teams, 3 straight here in the previews versus Brandon and Wolves at 1-2. Things I'll be looking for in this one, Drew Brees in London, see how he performs. Superman in New England for the Wolves, see how he performs. Last time he did well in New England. Then you got for Wolves, Dalvin Cook in a big game versus Detroit. Both those teams 2-1. Going to be a big divisional game. Geese, two running backs with a tough matchup versus Pittsburgh there, and Javorius Allen and Terrence West. In this one, it's the battle of the tight ends. If you look, Fighting Geese has the 2nd and 3rd best tight end in fantasy, and Wolves has the 4th and 5th best. So definitely tight end is a strength for both of these teams. Geese did fall to the number 2 seed, though, losing the number 1 seed this past week. But I do have Geese beating Wolves in this one to stay undefeated. Next up, we got Luke and Too Good for a Name at 2-1 versus Gwevin. Well, Gwevin. Monsters of the Midway at 1-2. We all know what I think about Gwevin. For me, could Brady beat Monsters by himself? He could very well. You see what Brady's been doing all year for Too Good for a Name, best quarterback in fantasy, obviously. Looking at a few things, though, Sproul's gone now for Luke and Too Good for a Name. The run game is very thin, which could be a cause for concern for the rest of the season. Luke was the guy that also traded Kareem Hunt away, so obviously having him on the roster would have made a big impact, probably a championship impact, but decided to think about next year. Mike Wallace, huge disappointment so far, averaging 2.33 points a week. We talked about how we thought it was a great draft pick. He's turned out to be a bust. And, looking at Monsters team, Stephon Diggs, best receiver in football. And then, thinking about the person taking over, he's going to have a high draft pick Andrew LOC, Diggs, LaShawn McCoy, DeMarco Murray. So whoever takes that team over is going to have a pretty good team. For this week, I got Luke and Too Good for a Name winning this one. Next up, we got myself, the commish, at 1 and 2 versus Krista and Storm 0 and 3. Two teams that I don't think expected to be in these positions. Two teams that I thought were going to be pretty decent this year. But looking at it, I got Crabtree in the no-fly zone in Denver, so that's not going to be any good after he only put up 1.5 points against the Skins last week. Whereas Storm had, you got Russell Wilson, an easy one versus Indy at home on Sunday. I think he'll put up huge points. Looking at this one, whoever loses this one, will they be a seller? I mean, I know for Storm they would fall to 0 and 4. You got to consider selling at that point. For myself, possibly a seller. Injuries have obviously derailed both teams. Lifetime, obviously I'm 2 and 0 versus Krista. Would like to keep that going. One thing that I noticed though, very interesting stat: Storm, Krista has more points than Ryan in long yard, yet Storm is 0 and 3, long yard 3 and 0. I mean, that's tough to look at. The most points against for Storm, Krista and Storm, everybody has their best game against her. I got myself winning this one. Next up, we got Brian in the 12th man. He's 2 and 1, taking on Joshua and Shasha Heineken, 0 and 3 divisional opponent. 12th man is 2 and 0 lifetime versus him. Stories for this one for 12th man. When's Julio finally going to find the end zone? Still putting up some decent points, but obviously not Julio Jones-esque points. Stafford at mini in a big one there is going to be fun to watch for Sasha Heineken. But in the end, I think AJ and Julio are just going to be too powerful in this one, and I have Brian in the 12th man winning this one. Next up, I got a huge divisional game here. George and Pack Attack 1 and 2 versus Robert and Templars 1 and 2. This literally could be for first in the East. As the winner could be the only team that's 500. Looking at it, some good matchups for quarterbacks. Dak Prescott versus Los Angeles. Eli in Tampa Bay against that crippled defense. So both quarterbacks should have a pretty good day. For George and Pack Attack, obviously his success is rooted around Packers players. They play Thursday night primetime, so he'll need to establish a big lead in that one. The Kelvin Benjamin injury is obviously going to hurt Robert. And then looking at Marshawn Lynch, he was the 3rd pick in the draft for George. Only putting up 9.57 points a week right now. I'm sure he probably would have wanted more out of beast mode. I got Templars winning this one, and who knows, maybe Templars still has a chance at being a 3-time divisional champ. Next up, we got Sean and Drink AJ OJ at 1 and 2 versus Danny and Billsy Bob Tim Horton at 1 and 2. Again, kind of like the Hustler Storm game, a crossroads for both of these teams. Maybe not so much for Sean because that East Division sucks, but looking at it, David Carr in the no-fly zone for Billsy Bob. That's going to be tough, especially after he had a tough game. Obviously an injury concern with Melvin Gordon. They say it's not serious, but the injury history has to be a concern. For Sean, is Blake Bortles your starter? That should be interesting to see. Or do you go Cutler against New Orleans? Smallwood and Blunt, I mean, can these guys be twin towers now for the Philly running game now that Sproles is gone? But, one thing is, one of the questions has to be, is Sean overrated? I guess maybe we'll find out in this one, but I do have AJ OJ winning that one. Next up, we got our first segment for Survivor of the Week. I did it a bit early, just because this one is a huge game, guys. It's John and My Ball Zach Ertz at 1 and 2 versus Steven and US1 3 and 0. Only 2 points separate these teams for points 4. John only has 2 more points. Obviously, whoever wins this one has the advantage because they will have the win-loss record against each other. Whoever loses this one, I see in that last spot. So this one obviously is huge. Looking at it, US1, his first pick in the draft was Run DMC and McFadden. He doesn't have a single fantasy point this year. Just bad picking. No run game whatsoever for Steven. That's going to cost him. He does have Alex Smith and Tyreek Hill at home in the Monday Nighter, so that could be fun to watch if he's close in that one. For my Balzackers, Dwayne Allen, got to consider him an absolute bust. 0 points so far. And then looking at John and my Balzackers, he went Leonard Fournette with the first pick of the draft. I still think pretty good first pick, 19.53 points per game average, and obviously probably a bright future being a rookie running back. I have my ball winning this one against Steven. Next up, guys, we got our game of the week. There were so many games of the week to look at this week, but I decided to go with this one just because of the history between the two teams. It's a divisional rivalry. Chris and True North at 3-0 versus Lucas and Green Lightning at 2-1. Chris is 4-0 versus Lucas, lifetime. It's almost like, Lucas, I feel your pain. It's like watching the Browns versus the Steelers. They lose to them every year, and obviously you're losing to Chris every year. So it's going to have to take a big upset in this one for you to win, especially considering Chris has Rodgers at home versus Chicago in a Thursday Nighter. You know, he always loves to put up points at home. The bright news for you, Lucas, though, is Carson Wentz is definitely looking like the franchise quarterback you thought he would be. Jordan Howard is basically, it seemed like he played for his job last game, and guy did pretty good. I mean, obviously it's now become the Thunder and Lightning tandem in Chicago, so that's pretty good. Really looking at the wide receiver group for True North, it's unstoppable. I mean, you look at the group, AB, Cooks, Rashard Matthews. AB's second best wide receiver in fantasy, Brandon Cooks fourth best. So because of that alone and having Rodgers and just so much depth, I do find that True North will go 5-0 versus you lifetime and stay undefeated. And I hope that everyone enjoys an excellent week of fantasy football.